Hey, everybody, welcome to the Grab the Map podcast, where we don't just look at it, we grab the map. I'm John Crutchfield, and we like talking about all things real estate investing. Exciting podcast slash interview for you today. I think it's gonna really bless you. Got Jeff Stevens on the line. Hey, Jeff, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm right here.
Man, let's hop right into this because I've been trying to get you on the phone, and man, you protect your time. So we're gonna talk about that. But I definitely wanted to have a conversation with you, and you've got my attention now. So I'm excited. I'm gonna learn something from you, and hopefully we can share something with the audience. How's it going?
It's going great. It's going great. And I appreciate you wanting to chat. And I will say I've not always been good at protecting my time. It's more of like a recent recommitment to trying my best. So,
Hey man, he's really good at protecting his time. You know, I tell you the funny story. I tried to get him on the phone just to get him to call me, and I was very, very aggressive. I felt like I was trying to get a girl to go on a date, and he was like, no, no, no. And then we saw that we had some common interest and decided to do a podcast together. So this is actually our first conversation. If I seem like I'm blushing, I probably am.
well, I'm enjoying our first date so far. So,
All right, very, very good. Hey, tell me a little bit about what you've got going on. I see you've got a social media presence, but maybe tell us a little bit about your business.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been, doing real estate investing for quite a while. And then about 2 years ago, I started slowly transitioning towards figuring out how I could help other people. So that started with creating a podcast and then, Facebook group and some other things kind of along those lines to find a way to spread the message. But I think, what message am I spreading, I guess, is maybe the question. I just believe a lot in sitting down face to face with the people that you want to buy properties from. I mean, real estate investing is this huge world, right? And there's a million different flavors. There's a million different aspects of it. And the part that always gets me going the most is the acquisition process. And within the subcategory there of acquisition, I think I've developed a belief that the greatest possible chance of both parties getting the best outcome happens when they get to talk one-on-one, face to face, without translators, without intermediaries. And I know not everybody agrees with me on that, but that's what I've come to believe. And I like that. I really like just sitting down in someone's living room and seeing if we can't work out something that works really well for both of us.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Your materials online, are you the thoughtful real estate entrepreneur?
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very thoughtful comment just then. So, no brokers, no middlemen. You'd like to be direct to seller.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it puts to work some of my better skills or strengths, but I also really believe it can lead to the best possible outcomes for everybody involved.
Awesome. I totally agree. Some of my best deals have come direct to seller. Absolutely true. Tell us a little bit about your portfolio and what your real estate business looks like right now.
Yeah. So I'm kind of more of a long-term hold kind of person. I've been a full-time investor since 2013 and did a little bit part-time for several years before that. So since 2013, I've primarily bought long-term holds, but I'm not afraid to mix in there a few flips, maybe even a couple wholesale deals occasionally. My heart is really in long-term holds, but because I am trying to make a living as well as build something for the long term, I am open to shorter term deals as well as longer term deals. So I'm out in Oregon. We've got, I guess prices and whatnot are very relative to markets across the country, but I think a lot of people would consider where I am kind of on the expensive side of things. So we have about, I think, 38 or so rental units. I think it's probably about $11 million total kind of like value, I guess, just to sort of put it in context. It's one of the things that's so funny about talking to people in this business is like, you can talk to somebody who's got 140 units in one area, and that's the equivalent of like, 7 units downtown San Francisco. And so it's very hard to like have any context for that. But anyway, yeah, that's what I do.
I think that's a good way to kind of explain it. Like, you're actively doing deals. You definitely are holding property right now. And that's a great thing whenever, I'm talking to somebody, is I want to know that you are active and that you're still doing. I know you're doing a lot of education as well, but it's always good to have somebody who's educating you, who is actually in the business. And so I hear that right away. What got you started in real estate investing?
Well, I think my initial story is probably not too different than a lot of people. I read that book with the purple cover and the word "dad" in it twice.
The Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, that's the one. Got me all fired up. This is a long time ago now. It's early 2000s, and I'm a pretty good action taker kind of guy. So we had just my wife and I bought our own primary residence maybe a year or so before that. But Rich Dad Poor Dad got my wheels turning a bit. So started trying to figure out how we could, buy an investment property. And we had purchased our primary residence at a good time in a good location. So we'd seen some kind of quick value change and appreciation. So we extracted some equity from that in the form of a HELOC and went and bought our first deal, which was a triplex. Very mundane deal, kind of now that I think back on it, very not very much like what I would do today. But it was very traditional. Like, it was on the market. I went to a bank and got a loan and did it.
Did you use a realtor?
I did. I know. I can't believe it.
Look, who am I talking to here? So you went through the process. I'm so glad you said that, because that's actually who I recommend, like, using a realtor. People that are doing a deal for the first time, whether it be their first home or their first investment property. A lot of times having that guide the first time can be pretty helpful. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's exactly what you did.
Yeah, it totally is. And I try to be cognizant of that as I'm advocating for, evangelizing about the idea of just sitting down with people in their living rooms. I definitely realize that the first time you do something, it's going to be a little scary. So I don't think there's any problem at all with that. I'm glad that I don't do it that way today, but I'm also glad that I did it that way then, because simply it got me started. Like, there's that expression, you can't steer a parked car. So sometimes you just have to get started, no matter what the means is, really.
Absolutely. Sometimes you just gotta get going. So when you bought that first investment property, did you plan to scale up, or was there a plan to, like, just try it out and see if it would work?
Yeah, I think I was planning to scale, although my thoughts about scale probably are different now than they were at the time. I definitely did not see it as just a one-time endeavor. I saw that definitely just as the first of many, but I can't say I saw the whole path in front of me in exactly that moment. I was kind of just focused on getting the first one done.
Absolutely. So you got that first one done, kind of a traditional, maybe 20% down purchase, use a realtor. Was it already rented already?
It was. Yep. All 3 units were rented.
All
I think
3
one was
units
about to
rented,
turn over, I think.
no value add, just straightforward.
Yeah, really, there was not much value add. No, that's definitely a big difference between mostly what I do today. Is I would try to find things where I can make it better somehow. But yeah, it was straightforward. Gave me a little bit of practice, self-managing, a little bit of practice on the transactional side of things. Helped me get a taste for, like, what I liked and what I didn't like, and sometimes you just have to get a few at bats to sort of get your feel for what seems right.
Right. So tell me how your investing decisions progressed from there. You did that first deal. It was traditional. I know, imagine at some point you realized there was a different way to do things. So walk us into that.
Yeah. It's funny. I picture this pendulum in my mind. So I started way on this one side of the pendulum arc, which was very, very traditional. And then the more I got interested in real estate, the more I started learning, listening to podcasts, and, podcasts were kind of new at the time, but this and that, I got exposed to lots of different ideas, things that you might consider to be a little more creative, wholesaling and things like that I didn't know about before. I went to a couple of conferences, and then I'd say my pendulum swung all the way to the other side, where I was thinking very much about things like wholesaling and bandit signs and all this kind of stuff. And so then I started trying to do that. But here's the problem. That stuff didn't feel like me, right? I had a real block mentally, because it just did not feel authentic to me and who I am. And so I tried that stuff for a while, but it's like, it didn't go that well. And it took me a while to figure out that it just didn't feel very genuine to who I am. And so then the pendulum starts to swing back a little bit towards the middle. And I'm thinking, well, how do I find my own voice here? I mean, how can I employ maybe some creativity and entrepreneurship to it, but without treading into territory that didn't really feel like me. So that's been kind of my journey overall. So it took me, I like this expression, find your voice. I think that everybody has to find their voice within real estate investing or real estate entrepreneurship, or heck, even entrepreneurship in general. And it's a little bit of a stumbling around in the dark process. And, you bump into something, you're like, oh, that didn't feel good. And you bump into something else and like, oh, that feels a little bit better. And then you kind of progress till you're like, oh, I found my voice. I found like the right key that I should be singing in, so to speak.
Tell us about the first deal you did creatively that kind of helped you think about it that way. Like, this might be more in the zone. I call it, that I'm in the zone when I'm doing deals this way.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Well, actually, if I can, let me tell you about the one where it was close to clicking, but not quite. And
all right.
So I feel like in my story, like I hit a wall twice.
Okay.
The first wall was a wall where I just felt gross about what I was doing. It didn't feel like me. The second wall I hit was interesting though. So I had been doing some direct mail and I connected with a seller named Larry, and Larry's an older guy and we had great rapport, and he had a house that he was willing to be involved with the financing in, so seller financing. And so I negotiated seller financing with him. And then I started doing the due diligence, and I discovered that there were some significant physical issues with the property that I didn't anticipate there, like foundation problems.
Okay.
And so as I tried to assess what it was going to take to rectify those, I had to go back to Larry and I said, Larry, we found this problem, and I'd like to proceed, but we just have to make some adjustments to this transaction because it's just simply not going to work like this, because it's a bigger problem than either you or I realized. And while he understood that and appreciated it, he couldn't financially kind of get to the point where I needed him to be in terms of price. And so I had negotiated the seller financing, but we couldn't come to terms on the price. And so I had to let it go. And I was really disappointed because I felt like, the rapport building side of Jeff, this is working. Like, this is what I should be doing. I'm sitting in his living room, I'm listening, I'm working out a creative solution. But then this deal fell apart and I was super bummed. So a few months later, I have some friends here in town who are educating people on real estate investing, and they were doing a bus tour. So they throw a bunch of people in a bus, drive them around to a bunch of different projects, properties, deals, and sort of tell the mini case study of each one. I threw myself in that bus with them. The last stop of the day, we pull up in front of Larry's house, and I am just like, oh my gosh, no way. I mean,
no way.
2 million people live in this town. We're in front of Larry's house, for crying out loud. Like, wow, what a coincidence. And my friend proceeds to tell this story about how he negotiated seller financing, and then they found these, foundation problems. So then he employed all these other creative tools, like substituting the collateral for the note. And then he was going to resell the property to another flipper because he didn't want to do the project, by wrapping the existing financing. He was explaining this, and I was just looking at him with my jaw on the ground and this blank stare, like, dude, are you speaking Chinese right now? Because I don't understand a word you're saying. Right. And in that moment, after he was done explaining that, I went up to him and I said, Mike, I had this property in contract. I found these problems. I had to let it go because I didn't know what to do with it. And frankly, you just explained it and I still didn't understand. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and he said, Jeff, if you want to be as good at this sport as I think you do, you need to learn some of these deal structuring techniques. And he pointed me in the right direction, and it connected me with a mentor, and I was off to the races after that. But it was that deal where I hit a wall. It was so frustrating because I felt like I was finally doing something that felt right to me, but right. I didn't have the technical toolbox to make it happen.
Absolutely. So you definitely were building rapport with the seller. You like that. You were helping the seller solve a problem. You really liked that, but maybe still needed some of the technical expertise, some of the mentorship. And I've remembered several scenarios like this where folks mention a way of getting a deal done. And I'm like, wait, say that again. Like, say it 3 times. So let me write it down. Let me figure out what it is you're saying. And when they say it, it's just like matter of fact, like they do it all the time.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So you almost have an opportunity to have it click there. And then when does it click?
So I would say it started clicking shortly thereafter, because I realized I realized that there was this technical side of things I needed to learn. And so I started learning that. And what I really realized in that moment was that my perfect version of real estate entrepreneurship for me was a perfect mix of left brain and right brain thinking, that I needed to have the left brain toolbox, the technical understanding of how to structure deals and that kind of stuff. But I needed to also be able to employ that right brain, people oriented side of negotiation and listening and developing rapport. And so shortly after that, I started to kind of shore up the, the technical side of things. And then that's when it started clicking, is when I could go into someone's living room. The front stage of me was having a very right brain type conversation with them. The backstage of me, in the back of my head, was like the computer that was analyzing the situation. Yeah. And those two things happening simultaneously in concert was when the magic started to happen.
Yeah. So now that's your favorite way to get deals done, right? This is the only way.
This is the only way at this point for me. Yeah.
Do you still buy things traditionally every now and then, or
no?
All creative financing?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the two things are creative financing and the face-to-face negotiation. So I literally don't even look at what's on the market ever. So I have no idea really on that side of things. I've drawn a line in the sand myself for what I'm willing to do financing wise and what I'm not. And so what my definition is, not that I will never get a loan from a bank again. It's more that I will never put myself in a position where I am reliant on a bank to say yes for me to get my deal done. So I'm probably much more likely to engage a bank in a refinance, than a purchase loan or something like that. But I just decided I never wanted to be, subject to a bank's whimsy and whether they think that I am credit worthy and that if I'm growing at the right rate and all that. I just decided to cut that all out of my life.
Oh, if only you were at my lunch just a couple hours ago and who I was sitting next to, one of those bankers trying to convince him to let me keep going. So I totally get it. I think that your message really will resonate with a lot of people. A lot of our listeners on the Grab the Map podcast are new investors, and they're thinking about like how to get things done. They're thinking about how to get things done, and they're thinking like, how do I get things done when I don't always have the money down, or I don't always have like lump sums or great credit. They have all of these different scenarios that they're trying to figure out. And you're actually telling us right now that you get deals done without banks. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, all the time.
All the time.
I should say all the time. I should clarify. Like I'm not like a volume kind of person. I mean, I'm not closing 7 deals a month or anything like that. That's not my game. But I almost never use banks at all anymore.
Almost never.
Yeah.
Hey, look, man, I that's why I've been trying to get in touch with you, because see, all I do is use banks, but lately I have been using more creative structures to complement the bank's money.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite deals have been no bank creative deals. So I think you're probably addicted to those, like we all kind of fall in a lane and get addicted to something. I want to get to ask you a few more questions before we kind of push here. So why don't you do this? Could you walk us through an example of one of these deals? Use as many numbers as you like or not like, but could you walk us through an example of one of your creative, thoughtful real estate deals?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go back to one from last year.
Okay.
This was a single family home, and I met this seller because I sent him a letter, and that's just what I do.
Okay.
That's pretty much how I meet all my sellers, actually. This is not your typical we buy houses fast cash as is kind of offer. This is or letter, it's nothing like that. It's more like, hi, my name is Jeff. I like your property. Would you ever talk to me about that? Like it's very, very simple, very, very, very low pressure, very kind of relationship oriented. So anyway, seller calls me back, and we develop rapport very quickly. I see he's actually a writer and a consultant, and he's been involved with some book that I'm familiar with. So we've got an instant connection point, and we meet at his rental house, right? So I pretty much market only to absentee owners because I'm looking for people who have potentially a capital gains tax problem if they sell. That's something that kind of greases the wheels for the type of seller financing that I like to do, which would be an installment sale. And so I meet him and he says, I want to sell my rental property and I'm going to buy something out of state. And I go, oh, interesting. So you're going to 1031 into something out of state. And he says, yes. And I start to wonder, like, so are you 1031ing into something out of state because you want to do that? Or do you just sort of feel like you have to do that because you're not excited about paying the tax? He's like, yeah, no, I just don't want to pay the tax. I need a little bit of the money for a project I'm going to work on. But other than that, I just don't want to pay the tax. So I guess we'll do a 1031 exchange. Okay. So I'm talking to him and I'm thinking, well, I bet I could redirect this towards another, concept that would allow him to defer his capital gains, but without needing to do a 1031 exchange. Oftentimes, when it's a great time to sell a property, it's not always the same moment that's a great time to buy. So he's not really that excited about buying the next thing. So I say, hey, what if I were to make payments to you over time and we employed the structure of an installment sale? It would give you some similar sort of effects in terms of your capital gains tax. You continue to have an income and you don't have to go buy another property. He said, great, that sounds perfect. So we put this deal in contract. By the way, is the pace of my story okay here? I don't want to.
I think it's great. I think it's great. Some other questions are popping up as you go, but I want to hear this.
So I put this property in contract like February 2020. And what happens, a month later, COVID explodes. And I'm thinking, I'm in contract on this property. I have no idea what effect COVID is going to have on the real estate market yet. I mean,
the world changed. Yeah.
Yeah. The world changed, pretty much overnight. So we end up extending this deal probably 5 or 6 times to the point where the overall escrow was about 6 months now. And I found sort of reasonable reasons to keep extending it, from due diligence things that came up that inside my head, I was like, I don't want to close on this property yet. I don't know what's happening to the world, but I had to keep finding, plausible reasons to extend the due diligence without saying, hey, I'm scared. So we did that, and we get to the end of the due diligence period. So I've negotiated now to buy this property for about $300,000 and put $60,000 down. Okay. Now I have learned from the seller that he needs the $60,000 because he needs to work on this other vacation home that he's got. Okay. But he's telling me, the contractors for the vacation home are so backed up. I just need to make a deposit on my work to them, but they can't actually do the work yet. So a week before closing, I go back to him and I say, hey, that $60,000 down payment I'm supposed to make, what if I give you 30 at closing and then I give you 30 within a couple months after that? Because I know you don't actually need all of it because the contractors can't do the work right now. We've been 6 months in escrow. We've developed tons and tons and tons of good rapport. Overall, we've had so much opportunity to spend time together, right? And he says, yeah, sure, no problem. So my down payment now goes from 20% to 10%. I have to come up with the other 10% shortly. Okay. But my plan is to flip the property. I'm going to add a bathroom. I'm going to quickly flip this property. But I've got an excellent piece of long-term seller financing from this seller, right? And if I sell the property, I don't want to give up this amazing financing I've negotiated. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I go back to him and I say, okay, when I sell this property, I would like to substitute the collateral for your loan to a different piece of property that I own, because you don't want to get paid off. I don't want to pay you off. If I pay you off, it's going to screw up this whole capital gains tax strategy that you've got. So let me give you a different piece of collateral from my property, or from my portfolio rather. And I have this beautiful fourplex over here. It's worth $1 million. It's got a bunch of equity in it. Let me put your $240,000 note in, secured by that property. It'll be junior to some existing debt, but let's put you over there. And he says, okay, no problem. So we move that debt off of this little single family house onto the fourplex. And now I've got a property that is free and clear. And I sell the property. It's free and clear. There's no debt to pay off. So I flip the property and I get a huge wire of proceeds coming to me because of the creative debt structure there. Now, I hope I've explained that in a way that's remotely followable. But that's kind of a good example of the type of things that I would do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's brilliant, right? You bring up all kinds of things that we could dive into, but we're limited on time. But you found your ideal seller, right? You talked about your ideal seller. You mentioned that you look for folks who maybe have a capital gains problem, or maybe they're an absentee owner. You're looking for a single family house. So you kind of have your ideal asset class there. Just so many awesome things here. You talked about like really trying to listen to what the seller needs, right? So what is the seller going to do with the money? It sounds like what is the seller trying to solve? What problem are they trying to solve?
Exactly.
But you're also, structuring the deal in a way that works for you. Substituting collateral, adjusting down payments, all of which you can do a lot easier if you're direct to seller, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, like a million times easier.
Yeah, so try asking a bank to take their down payment requirement down from 20% to 10% or 5% or 0%, right? All of which are a lot easier when you're dealing with an actual seller. So I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I just want to ask a few more questions because I think we may have to do another one here. So like long term, do you have long term goals in REI? I know you said you're not a high volume uh, real estate maybe buyer or seller per se, but what is your long term goal?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, transparently, I feel like it's evolving a little bit in,
Okay.
even right in front of my eyes. I mean, I've sort of set an arbitrary number of having, 200 quality units before. I've set an arbitrary number of having a $50 million portfolio. Um, but as I progress in life, I wonder sometimes, like, do I want to adjust those goals? I would say like for instance, in my markets, the way I do business, I'm taking a very balance sheet oriented approach, and where I know there's a lot of people that take a very cash flow oriented approach. And so I've been building my balance sheet, building my equity, but the types of properties and the location of the properties I own right now are not the ones that really maximize one's cash flow. And so I'm certainly in the process of thinking like, well, do I want to start converting equity to cash flow more assertively than I have done in the past? I sort of think of this as moving from like growth mode to like optimization mode, where I'm really right now, I've so far been really focused on growing, where maybe in the future I'll be focused on trying to convert that growth into sort of monthly income in a slightly different way. But the thing that I know about myself, and I'll just make this my final bit of my answer. The thing I know about myself is that if I'm not continually kind of exploring like what I'm capable of, I will just shrivel up. I'll get bored in 5 seconds. And so I know that there has to be some element of like continuing to challenge myself.
Yeah, the challenge is very important, and new goals sometimes are good to set. Reflection is good. I find that happening in my own business as well, like evolving and changing what I want and changing kind of how I want to manage everything. So that's pretty cool. What like I guess if you had to like identify a benefit to real estate investing on your life, what would you say real estate has done for your life?
Well, so I look at real estate. I think of real estate entrepreneurship versus real estate investing. To me, those are kind of two different things. We use the word investing most commonly, but I think of an investor as somebody who gathers up resources and then finds a vehicle into which to place those resources. Whereas I see an entrepreneur instead as somebody who goes out and creates value, creates an opportunity, and then sources the resources needed to fulfill that opportunity. So I see myself more as an entrepreneur. As I look back, even before I was a full-time real estate entrepreneur, I was an entrepreneur in a different industry as well. So why do I say that? As I reflect on your question, I have to answer it actually as what has entrepreneurship done for your life? And then what specifically has real estate entrepreneurship done for your life? And I've been a full-time entrepreneur of some sort I only had a real job, quote unquote, for about 2 years after college. So I've been a full-time entrepreneur now for 18 years. Okay. And it's given me just a ton of freedom. I would say honestly that the best part of entrepreneurship, although this is not the part anybody signs up for entrepreneurship to get, the actual best reward of entrepreneurship is the person you become in the process. Okay. Like I've been out there swinging the sword in the arena, trying to create my own paycheck for 18 years. And the person you become in the process of that is in many ways the greatest reward. But overall though, I mean, yeah, I've got I've got a great portfolio of properties that I love. I'm proud of all of them. I know I have the raw assets there to be able to convert to financial independence whenever I decide to, move from growth mode to optimization mode. Tremendous amount of flexibility. I love being able to set my own schedule, even if I choose to set it in kind of a work-like way. I have a
Right.
tremendous amount of flexibility, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, I can see it on your face, and I can tell the thoughtful real estate entrepreneur is aptly named.
Thank you.
Man, you talked about so many things today that I think will help our audience, but have also helped me just be more thoughtful. Thinking about how even the creative seller financing deal can also be more creative, right? Or
Yeah.
be structured even in a different way to extend the benefits of it. So I think if I had to say like big takeaways, I should be talking directly to sellers, right?
In my humble opinion, yes.
Yes,
Especially with your
yes.
personality. Like, come on. I mean, to have you stuck behind, a computer sending bullet points of an offer over to another person who's going to send offer to another person who's going to send it to the realtor. Like, you're so unbelievably personable. Like, why are we leaving those talents sitting on the bench? I don't get it. I mean,
That's
so
that's
that's my
so
answer.
that's so funny. You'd have to know me in person to know how forced this is. I'm really an introvert, but surely there's a way to get in touch with you, like outside of our podcast here. How can folks reach you if they want to follow up more with some of your strategies, and what offerings might you have to help somebody trying to get started?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think probably the two best resources I can think of that are easy, accessible. One is my podcast called Racking Up Rentals, in
Yeah.
which I talk each episode about these general ideas of being off market and doing seller financing types of deals, thoughtful philosophy. And then secondly, we have a Facebook group called Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders, where there's a nice group of people practicing this approach and coming together, asking questions and supporting each other. So I would say those things are best. Thoughtfulre.com if you'd like to check out our website. But those are some of the best ways.
These are great materials. I've listened to your Racking Up Rentals podcast. I'm a member of your Facebook group, and just seeing the types of things you post sometimes, I'm like, man, are we the same person? It's the way that you are. I would say you're probably way more thoughtful, but I would say the way that you interact with your community, the way that you respect them and encourage them to participate, appreciate their ideas. It's just there's a lot of synergy between us in that regard. So this is certain to help somebody. I appreciate you for coming on the Grab the Map podcast. If there was a closing thought you had to give, what was it? What would it be?
I would say that the greatest investment you could make would be to invest in your own ability to create agreement with people. Like, to me, you become so resilient when you have that skill, because everything could be stripped away from you. All your properties, all your money, everything could be stripped away from you. But if you have developed and honed that skill, you'll be in the best possible position to start over or continue to grow or whatever. So I think that is the thing that I just wish more people would invest in their own ability to go make things happen entrepreneurially in the world, whether you're negotiating to buy a piece of property or anything else, because no one can take that away from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's great. This has been a blessing to me and hopefully a blessing to our community. If you've got comments, certainly if you're watching this on YouTube, put those comments below. If you want to reach out, Jeff has provided his contact details. We'd love for you to reach out, maybe join his Facebook group. And as always, you all can reach me at the handle Grab the Map on Facebook or at grabthemap.com. Don't just look at it, grab the map.